Before getting into the best of this episode in which Joel, Tess, and Ellie have to maneuver through a museum of clickers, I want to acknowledge the cold open again. I find it really interesting the direction that Craig Mazin is going for the start of these episodes, because it feels like the book for World War Z so far. This is also assuming that this continues to be the case for the following episodes, but in the book World War Z, it was essentially a collection of different points of views throughout the world during a zombie outbreak. It was a great read because it offered a lot of variety and substance because every perspective the book explored was unique. So The Last of Us so far is kind of going down this route because we have two new and original perspectives that further expand upon the world. For this one, it was intriguing to see the initial start of the outbreak and to have someone explain with expertise and fully educate the audience as to how someone gets infected and for it to be more believable, which makes the scenario even more realistic and thus scary. Craig Mazin again is great at hitting you with this gut punch feeling of dread, in which the scientist acknowledges that this is an extinction level event and advises the military officer to bomb the city. Truly a crushing form of advice that the scientist gives, but she knows it's necessary to save the world. And this even has a callback in the episode where Joel, Ellie, and Tess come across a crater. For this cold open, it obviously isn't in the game because it would destroy any sort of momentum in the gameplay if you cut to some random scientist halfway across the world. However, for the show, you don't have to constantly keep the player engaged with action. For the point where we're at in the show, there were about 7 action set pieces in the game thus far. So I saw some people complaining about there not being enough action, and the show is boring in comparison. But do you realize how much that would ruin the tense nature of the show? For action to be satisfying, there has to be stakes for it, build up, and by having too much of it, you lose out on character development opportunities. Especially in the show, that is more of a tense thriller survival. If you are constantly having Joel kill dozens of infected in every other scene, then the factor of danger starts to diminish because the show would now be establishing the main character as an action hero. For the game, you kind of are that, but you have to keep in mind how many times you died while playing the game, assuming what difficulty you played on. Because I hate to break it to some people, but you can't respawn in a TV show. Along with the fact that Joel had an extremely hard time killing one clicker, so the mechanics in which you keep the player/viewer scared for the well-being of the character work differently. One is grounded in realism that we are forced to watch and be on the edge of our seat, while the other one is more of a challenging experience and punishes you if you die. The show not having hours worth of action is not a bad thing, and if anything, is a great benefit that the show takes advantage of. Any of that lost time in terms of the game's length is converted into original scenes. Craig Mazin is able to simultaneously turn the reduction of action into a double positive because it frees up time for new material, and it gives the show a better pace, and allows the infected to be more intimidating, because we aren't constantly mowing them down, and we can use them in more of a horror angle. Also, through the show, Joel's able to have a deeper impact through him killing a Fedra officer. In the game, you essentially kill dozens of them, and as a player, you become desensitized to that violence.
Let's just be cool, man. Take it easy, alright?
The show is able to make Joel even more human because he's dealing with the emotional consequences of taking one human life. And to also do this, you need that good pace within the script so that we can have character-focused scenes after big events. As an example, this scene where Joel and Tess are observing to see if Ellie turns wasn't in the game. It creates this balanced flow so that the characters can properly process and react to what recently happened. And again, this is a great original scene. It's filled with good character-focused conflict because they don't buy the fact that she's actually immune, and it offers Ellie to try to disarm their fears with a funny moment.
Don't.
Then, before going into the terrifying scene with the clickers, I want to gush about how beautiful the production design and set decoration is in the show. I was really excited to see how it was going into this episode, but it thoroughly exceeded my expectations with how insanely detailed and worn down every square inch of this world is. From vines and vegetation covering almost every surface, flooded areas, animals roaming, dilapidated structures, fungus sprawling from decomposing corpses, gorgeous vistas that are aided by seamless and abundant VFX, and a frog that knows how to play the piano. This show is completely astounding as to how detailed the world is, and I'm dying to know how much this aspect alone costed HBO in terms of the budget. Because off of looking it up, each episode has a budget of somewhere in the range of 10 to 15 million, and it's really paying off. With that magnificent aspect of the show out of the way, let's finally get into the clicker scene. To say that the scene was just scary or tense would be an understatement because there are so many aspects that make this a perfect horror and action scene. From the prior setup of our characters being like, oh shit, there's a variant in the building. The false sense of success that our characters gain when they navigated through this madhouse until the unlucky collapse of a roof near them. The really slow buildup of the clickers making their way to our protagonists and us hearing them, not giving the audience a clearer view of the clickers to make us even more terrified of the unknown. The genius set location where there are glass cases in which you can see clickers pass by on the other side. The atmosphere of the room being dark and foggy with the flashlights barely making out the moving subjects. Our characters being absolutely scared to the bone that they're about to die, and the final release of tension into chaotic action with the close-up of the clickers screaming was amazing. Every single aspect within the scene is perfect, and is all intelligently designed to elevate the horror. I also love how the characters didn't even knock anything over to alert the clickers, and was purely just from Ellie breathing too hard. It makes them that much more terrifying when they can hear breathing because it's almost impossible to suppress that. Then the action segment was just as good as the horror build-up because of how hard these clickers were to overcome. That's one issue within the game because you have an ability in which you miraculously get echolocation, in which you can see every zombie through walls. This essentially destroys any scary aspect within the game when you're trying to stealth because it's much easier when you have wall hacks. However, in the show, Joel doesn't have superhuman X-ray vision, and they have to pray to God that they don't get found by the clickers. Another thing that you may not realize is that reloading your gun can make noise. One of my favorite moments in this scene was Joel slowly trying to reload and minimizing his noise while the clicker slowly approaches him. The cinematography of this moment aids the suspense because the camera moves to a close-up on Joel as the frame leaves out the clicker, and we don't know how close it's getting. We essentially enter Joel's frightened perspective, and then move with him as we reveal the clicker again. And even the pesky glass from the game that you can step on makes an appearance, and quickly turns the scene into a helpless struggle. If the rest of the show is able to consistently execute scenes of this caliber, then I can honestly find no faults. Like, this is just unmatched quality that has every aspect of production firing on all cylinders to deliver one of the best visual products on the market right now. Then obviously the narrative continues to hit some great beats in which Tess actually got bit and is forced to stay behind and kill the infected. An interesting change here is that Craig Mazin made it to where the fungus is a single organism that can be alerted miles away if you step on its tendrils. It makes for a great mechanic to further increase the suspense because the characters are screwed if they happen to step on it. Even Neil Druckmann admitted that this was a change that he loved. Episode 2 of The Last of Us continues the outstanding opening of the season and manages to create one of the most scary and intense scenes in a zombie movie or show in a long time. And to think that the show is already seeming like it's peaking now is a crazy thing because there are still so many great sequences to come. This episode proves that the first episode's quality wasn't a fluke, and again the execution is practically perfect. Thank you for watching and let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments.